Thanks so much for sitting down with us, John, as always.
No problem.
First, would you mind just kind of recapping the class a little bit? What are you guys working on? How's training been going for ADCC?
Yeah, it's been a pretty long camp for the guys, and at the early stages, there were other professional matches that athletes had to go through. Gordon had a recent match at WNO, and Nicholas had build-up matches. So there were periods where we were building up for very serious opponents. We had to fight people as talented as Felipe Pena, Kenan Duarte, and that was all part of the build-up. So it's been a very long camp. Now we're going down into the peak week where everyone's getting their overall fitness level tested, and you probably saw today the sessions, the sparring sessions were very, very long today. So it was like a test of where they stand physically. As you would expect in any high-level training camp, everyone's got bumps and bruises, and hopefully they'll be resolved in the final week in Las Vegas when training intensity goes down significantly. And everyone's gave their usual full commitment to training and done very well.
Yeah, you're saying kind of a test of cardio. So how did the test go? How does everybody look?
They all failed. No, they did great. As you saw, the matches today were very long, as you would expect in overtime, finals, or beyond, and everyone did very well. I was very happy.
Awesome. You know, this is kind of one more ADCC camp. Of course, you've been through this cycle many, many times now. Just how does it feel to be kind of back here on the eve of one more, big ADCC World Championships?
It's always a special moment. And every time we've gone to ADCC, it's been with a different crew, new faces, new people, and that always makes it exciting. There's this strange mix of the more established students helping to guide the younger students through. We have some brilliant young athletes, teenagers coming into competition this year, and watching them interact with the experience of the athletes who have been there before, it's really something special. So it's been a delight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I just wanted to kind of dive in and ask about a couple of the athletes here
Yes.
that you have training on the mats. Maybe we'll start with Gordon Ryan, of course. Gordon, defending his super fight title here in just a week or so, but how's Gordon been doing? How's he been looking?
I'm sure it's no secret at this point. Gordon's had a pretty terrible year with his health. A remarkable thing that people may not be aware of is that for the last 3 ADCCs, Gordon's been going through this, but in a much less severe fashion. He's always been able to pull through a camp and find a way to get past his recurring stomach illnesses and find a way to win matches. This year has been significantly worse. It's no exaggeration to say that Gordon's going through a health crisis. And unfortunately, the medical experts haven't really gained any clear consensus as to what the problem is. And if you don't even know what the problem is, it's very hard to treat it. So there has been a deterioration in the course of this year. Gordon's gone through some very, very rough times. He's kind of heroically trying to pull through now, and it's been a late start to his camp just because he physically couldn't start alongside the others. But he has days where he looks like the old Gordon Ryan. He has other days where he looks like he's really struggling. So it's incredibly frustrating to deal with, because it can be Tuesday looks great and then Wednesday looks terrible, and you just don't know. So he's going to go out and do what he can, and I suspect, given the very nature of the problem, that it may not be until days before or even hours before that we know whether he'll be able to go out and do it or not. We saw this when he had this match against Josh Saunders, where it was an open question as to whether or not the match would be possible up to minutes before the match began. But Gordon is technically a true master of jiu-jitsu, and even when he's not 100%, his technical mastery and skill means that he can still put on a pretty amazing performance, even when inside he feels terrible.
Regardless of what happens kind of in the next week or so, do you feel like Gordon's legacy is kind of already been cemented?
I believe so. But Gordon also has a very high population of haters who would deny this till to the end of the earth. So I think what he's done has been absolutely remarkable. If he never competed again from today, I would still consider him the greatest no-gi athlete of all time. but other people will be wanting some kind of further proof, some kind of further solidification. And there's also doubters who say, oh, he doesn't have a real stomach issue, it's just a make-believe excuse to make up for problems that he has. I don't know what to say to these people, but basically I'm in agreement with what you said. I think that his legacy has been established, but it would just be one more amazing performance if he could get through this health issue and win 2 super fights at ADCC.
And then, yeah, talking about some of the greats, of course, one of the biggest storylines I think going into this ADCC World Championships is Nicholas Maragal, and kind of the laser focus it seems like he had. What can you tell us about Nicholas and kind of his goals going into the ADCC?
Well, Nicholas's goals, he's already had one hell of a year. Back to back, he's completely dominated and submitted 3 ADCC champions in competition before ADCC, and he did so in a way which was just remarkable. And from my perspective as a coach, I'm stunned every day when I watch this guy train. It's the degree of artistry he exhibits, and how quickly he's been able to take on the whole no-gi aspect of jiu-jitsu, which and almost like reinvent himself as a jiu-jitsu player, someone who can play top, bottom, standing, ground. It's really something to behold. And at this point, his focus is not so much on beating his opponents, but beating his previous performance and adding some kind of new element to his game. If Nicholas is a mathematician, if Gordon is a mathematician of jiu-jitsu, Nicholas is like a musician of jiu-jitsu, and he's got a different mindset, and there's an artistry to what he does. Gordon is about systems and algorithms and step-by-step procedures. With Nicholas, you never quite know what he's going to do next, but it's always something brilliant. There's that kind of like, it's like a mathematical genius versus a musical genius, and I'm sure he's going to put on something truly special at ADCC.
And how long has it been now that you've been working with Nicholas, and what have you seen in the progression over that time?
When he first came in here, I can't lie, Nicholas used to get submitted by all of the blue belts. He didn't know any heel hook defenses, so he just get submitted all day by guys that he had never heard of. And those times were tough for Nicholas. You got to remember, he's a dominant world champion in the gi, and suddenly he's getting submitted by some guy that no one even knows, just some random guy on the mat, and getting finished 5-6 times in a session. And those early months were very hard, I'm sure, on Nicholas, but he's a great guy. He just dealt with it and started learning. He just said, hey, there's a whole part of this game I just don't know about. And within a very short time frame, he was someone who became difficult to leg lock. And then now you see him starting, you saw yourself today, now he's starting to leg lock other people, good people too. And he's always had a devastating armbar. He always had a devastating triangle. But now he's starting to work those into his no-gi game. And you can see him doing things with omoplata no-gi, which he's a very, very interesting guy to watch. So I'm very excited for what he can do. And what he's done and the time that he's done it is truly remarkable.
And I just want to get your thoughts on a couple potential matchups for Nicholas. Of course, I think one that everybody's kind of looking forward to is the rematch between him and Kynan. Do you expect that to go any different, or how do you?
Kynan is, in my opinion, one of the toughest guys to beat in all of jiu-jitsu. The only problem, the only reason people don't elevate Kynan to where he should be is because he can be a little inconsistent. But A-game Kynan can beat anybody in the world. And a big part of it is how he prepares for competition. And historically, if you look at Kynan's ADCC performances, he's always come into ADCC on point. He's never come into ADCC looking like discombobulated or disorganized. He's got a very, very good way of coming into the big shows in top form. So I think it's going to be a much tougher Kynan that Nicholas faces this time than it was in WNO. Like, I'm not taking anything away from what Nicholas did in WNO. It was an amazing performance. But Kynan has a historical record of when he's good, he's great. And every time he's been at ADCC, it's been great Kainan that we saw. So I think this is going to be one hell of a matchup.
And then another one that's kind of come up recently here, Mika Galva actually just called out Nicholas, kind of on the BJJ Stars over the weekend, and that's something that's kind of gaining a little bit of steam as a potential absolute showdown between Mika Galva and Nicholas Maragal. I just wanted to get your thoughts on that potential one.
Mika is one of the most gifted athletes in all of jiu-jitsu, and he's like a modern version of Marcelo Garcia. He's like a smaller athlete who really can go against bigger people and do really well. So I think that would be a super exciting match. Very different styles. Mika has shown an ability to beat bigger people. He's done incredibly well in open weights in jiu-jitsu competition before. He's got a beautiful jiu-jitsu game. He can attack from anywhere. He's got great top, great bottom. He's very good on the feet. The moves that he employs on the feet are often timing based. They're things like foot sweeps, which you can use on someone bigger and taller than yourself. So yeah, it could happen. It could be an amazing match.
And if Nicholas were to walk out at the end of the weekend with 2 gold medals around his neck, how would you feel about that?
Awful. No, I never answer questions like that because competition is competition. Anything can happen. You could be injured in your first match, so I don't even dream in those terms. It's just step by step. We've got a problem in front of us. We deal with one problem at a time. Everything else is just speculation and fantasy.
I tried to ask it in a little different way that time, but another guy who we're really excited about to see on the ADCC mats is Gary Toney, of course, OG legend of ADCC, back at the 77 kilogram division. What's the biggest difference you think between Gary from last ADCC to this one?
Gary had I think, a terrible weight cut for the last ADCC, and I also think that I did a poor job of preparing Gary in the last ADCC because we had an entirely new team. So I put most of my training focus on getting people who were just coming into our team ready for competition. And I trained them in a particular way, a positional-based game. And Gary is much more of a submissions-based game. And Gary did the camp, and I foolishly neglected to tell Gary, hey, you stick with your game, let these guys play theirs. And I think Gary took on too much of that positional game, played too conservatively, and ended up losing in the first match. Gary's big problem in this one, of course, will be the change in weight cut regulations. Now you just have to weigh in one day, so everyone's going to be a lot bigger. So Gary's going to be very small at 77 kilos. But Gary has a long track record of taking on bigger opponents in competition and doing very well. So again, Gary's a movement-based athlete, so he's not like a strength isometric control based athlete. He's a movement based and timing based, and smaller people who have that kind of methodology can do very well against bigger athletes, and Gary's shown that in the past.
It looks like for a minute that we weren't going to see maybe Gary at ADCC.
Gary's very fixated on mixed martial arts at this time, and he's going through some contract negotiations, so there's a free time period where he won't be fighting MMA, and as a result he was able to go into ADCC.
Gotcha. Cool. And you mentioned the weight cutting. Do you feel like that'll, or the weigh-ins, I'm sorry, that they went from 3 weigh-ins during ADCC down to just the 1. Do you think that'll change things up, shake things up?
It definitely will, especially in the future. Right now, the athletes are looking at, they've done the weight division before, so they're just stuck with the same weight division. Pretty soon, athletes are going to realize day before weigh-ins, you can cut some serious weight. And I think in future ADCCs, you're going to see a lot more weight cutting. It's going to become a very important part of the sport.
Gotcha. And then, a guy who's just like, it's impossible not to watch on the training mats here is Dorian Olivera, is, another young up-and-comer. Maybe a lot of people don't really know yet a whole lot about Dorian. So what can you tell us kind of about Dorian? What type of athlete is he?
Yeah, Dorian is one of the most gifted teenage athletes I've ever seen in my life. And he's got a very interesting skill set for ADCC competition. He's an outstanding wrestler, one of the most highly ranked high school wrestlers in the nation. He's also got extremely good jiu-jitsu. you guys all saw what he did at the ADCC trials and how effective he was there. We're trying to add to him the idea of bigger scores, getting to the mount and rear mount and finishing holds. And he's making remarkable progress with this. He and his father, they drive in 3 hours from Houston to come here and train. They're absolutely dedicated individuals who I can't say enough good things about them. They drive in all this way. Their whole life is programmed around Dorian's progress and finding the right training partners for him. They've done an amazing job. Dorian started training very, very young, and he's got so much focus. And he and his father put so much time and work into building this incredible young athlete. Having him here in this fight camp is one of the best things that ever happened. It just brought the whole room up in terms of energy level and like competition preparation. He's an amazing young athlete, and I think he could definitely surprise a lot of people. He may not be known now, but the grappling world will definitely know that young man's name one day.
Awesome. Could you kind of describe his style of grappling? Because I feel like it's a bit of a unique style for jiu-jitsu.
I would agree. It's based on the idea that he knows at any given moment against the vast majority of his athletes, of his opponents, he's going to be able to put them down. There's very few people that would be able to stop his takedown game in jiu-jitsu. And so the obvious thing is he's going to have to deal with guard position. So the next big skill set he built up was guard passing, and he has a outstanding ability to pass on the outside in multiple directions. And it's just as tiring to maintain guard against them as it is to do standing wrestling with them. And he uses this to fatigue and frustrate people, draw out attacks and overextend his opponents, and then seize his opportunity to pass. We're trying to add to that other elements of the game, which I think could easily be tacked on and would double or even triple his effectiveness. So I can't talk about those pre-competition, obviously, but I said it before and I'll say it again. He is an outstanding young individual, and seeing such talented young athletes as Dorian gives me great hope for the future of jiu-jitsu.
Mm-hmm. And how about the aspect of just understanding the ADCC rules? You know, I know that's always a big part of the ADCC camp is making sure that everybody knows the positions. And how do you feel about Dorian's acumen for ADCC?
He's an outstanding competitor who understands that a big part of competitive success is adapting what you do to the rule set you engage in. He's done it in wrestling, he does it in jiu-jitsu. You've seen him at ADCC trials do it very, very well. We showed a few tricks here that we employ, and he grasps those immediately and uses them in training. You saw some of that today. And tactically, he's very, very sound.
66 is a very stacked division. Is there anybody who you're maybe interested to see Dorian up against? Or
the whole division is very, very strong. 66 kilo was the male division, which was least affected by CJI. So it's essentially the same division. I don't think there had even a single pullout. So it's completely as it would be for a normal ADCC. So that, in my opinion, is one of the strongest and toughest weight divisions. Dorian will have some very, very tough opponents. I think Baby Shark, Fabricio Andri, and Diego Pato would probably be most people's favorites going into the tournament, sorry. All three of them are tough, very, very talented. A match with any of those guys, I think, would be an amazing thing for people to watch.
We also saw Helena Corr. She had an incredible performance at the West Coast trials. What's going to take for Helena to really become a star here in this next week or so?
I think that her game is on the ground is as good as anybody in the world, and she got into the standing game very late, and once her standing game catches up to her ground game, she's going to be a mega star. And she's an excellent competitor. She's got a great competitive spirit. She's exciting to watch. Plays top and bottom game on the ground equally well. She's made big strides in the standing position. She still has a way to go, but on the ground, I believe she can beat anyone. in the world.
And of course, in her division, actually, there's a lot of kind of veteran women in that field. Are you excited to see her test herself against the Bia
Absolutely.
Mosquitas and
Yeah.
the Anna Carolinas?
There's always been this question of, how good is Helena? And she's gone against a few of those women in that division before and done very well. But there's also some who are considered greatest female athletes of all time. And for a 17-year-old to go up against someone like that, it's a daunting prospect. Helena competes very well, and technically she is very, very sharp. And she has a dangerous submissions game, a very good positional game. I think she can, if she competes as she normally does, she can, again, like Dorian, shock a lot of people.
It's such a big team, I feel like you guys got this time around. Oliver Taza as well on there. In general, just kind of bringing the full team out there. Does that feel like a good situation that you guys are in?
Oh, yeah. We've always had big teams.
Yeah.
I think for the last 3 ADCCs, I think we qualified more people than any other team. So we've always gone out with big teams. So that's fun, getting everyone together. They've all trained so long and hard together in the gym, and then transporting them over to Las Vegas. It's always a good week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this time being in Las Vegas, T-Mobile Arena. I'm not sure if you've been out there for.
I haven't.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. I wasn't sure if you were with George or anything like that for some of his big fights. But T-Mobile Arena, the biggest venue for combat sports in America, Vegas. Do you feel like this one, every time it gets a little bit more special for ADCC?
Yeah. No, I think it's good for the sport, and that kind of like high visibility action, I think it brings in a lot of eyes and grows the sport overall.
Mm-hmm. And then I know you're always on the cutting edge, of course, of jiu-jitsu technique. Is there anything that you're going to be kind of keeping an eye on, looking out for in terms of jiu-jitsu technique at ADCC?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see.
No problem. We'll talk about it after the show for sure.
Absolutely. Okay, cool. Slack, is there anything you wanted to ask, John? Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I totally missed John Carlo, of course. I had a good, yes. John Carlo Boni, of course, the reigning ADCC champion. What's different about him going into this ADCC?
Good question. John Carlo looks very, very sharp in training, and he's in great physical condition. John Carlo's positional game last ADCC was very, very strong. His standing game, very, very strong. And he got 3 submissions out of 4 and came within seconds of making it every match by submission. So it's hard to say, okay, well, how are you going to improve upon that performance? 4 wins, almost all of them by submission. John Carlo, even if he just repeated that performance, it would be incredible. But I have to say that watching him train with his comrades in the gym, he's doing so much better now in the gym with the same people that he was last time, that I'm very confident his technical level has risen considerably in the last 2 years. And John Carlo's got a great way of peaking for the big competitions, and he's very, very excited for this ADCC. And he's of the mindset that winning ADCC is good, but dominating a weight division for years is the true goal. That's the real goal. And that's what distinguishes good athletes from great athletes. And the amount of work he's put in over the last 2 years to ensure that that is the case it's been very impressive to watch. I think I'm very much looking forward to watching him compete.
Do you feel like he has a little bit more pressure on his shoulders? I'm just wondering how he's handling that.
Of course. Every returning champion always has pressure. And ultimately that's what defines the great athletes, is they handle that pressure well. Again, it's very difficult to win ADCC, but it's much more difficult to keep winning ADCC, because the minute you win, you become the most studied athlete in the world in that weight division. Everyone's looking at you, and they know your game almost as well as you know yourself. So you have to keep reinventing yourself to give yourself that edge. It's not easy, and there is a psychological pressure. When you go in with nothing to lose, it's fun. When you go in with everything to lose, it's not fun anymore. So learning to deal with that and still make forward progress, it's a challenge for any athlete, John Carlo included. But I'm very, very happy with his technical progress, and as I said, if you look at his gym performances now versus 2 years ago, there's a big improvement.
It's going to be a crazy tournament. I know I always can't wait for it. Is there anything else you wanted to say while we're here?
That was great. Yeah. That was good questions.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the time, John.
My
Appreciate
pleasure.
it.
Thank you.